Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sandu and as promised from the unboxing video I posted 2 days ago, my final review for the topping DX7 Pro is ready, so let's check it out together. DX7 Pro is an updated version of the acclaimed DX7S that at that time replaced the DX7. So as you can see, the DX7 Pro is basically the third iteration of the all-in-one DAC, preamp and headphone amp combo. So DX7 Pro has now some even powerful Bluetooth capabilities. Should it also be called as a streamer? Not really, since both aptX and LDAC are still not capable of delivering beat-perfect, high-resolution data streams. But in time, with new tech, that will surely happen. So if you are wondering what exactly was improved or changed, or maybe left unchanged, so let's take a closer look. It seems that the DX7 Pro uses a slightly smaller and thinner case, losing a little bit of weight in the process, so it is now at only 1.4 kilograms. The DX7 Pro has an additional digital input, I2S input, and from my listening test, this is basically the best digital input, closely followed by the USB. The DX7 Pro has also an additional Bluetooth receiver, so actually the best Bluetooth receiver as of right now, from Qualcomm. So this one is capable of receiving AAC, CBC, aptX, aptX low latency, aptX HD and LDAC for up to 990 kilobytes per second wireless transmission. Bluetooth version 5.0 and the included antenna help a lot in maintaining a clear and stable wireless signal, even with three concrete walls between the sender and the DX7 Pro. Probably the biggest change is moving from a dual 2-channel ES9038 Q2M mobile chips to a single but more advanced and really more powerful 8-channel and desktop class ES9038 Pro DAC chip. The DX7 Pro moved to 3 high-performance acousilicon femtosecond crystal clocks, and combined with a better DAC chip, the total harmonic distortion was lowered by 5 times compared to the DX7S. I think that is quite an amazing achievement. Another great improvement is the headphone amp section. The DX7S was no slouch with headphones and could drive almost all of them except for current and hungry headphones like low sensitivity planar magnetic headphones. From a full watt of power on DX7S, newer device upped the game and delivers a whopping 1.7 watts in the same 32 ohm impedance. So this power increase was targeted mostly at planars that are mostly current and not voltage driven. There are other small improvements like higher signal to noise ratio on the balanced out and on the headphone out as well, and fewer smaller things. In terms of design and build quality, it is very clear to me that topping further improved it in terms of aesthetics and design. There isn't a single visible screw on the faceplate, on the side plates or underneath the device, so the DX7 Pro is very clean, simple and elegant looking. I really like the use of the black and white OLED screen. I think for a simple black or silver box it adds just a little bit of class and coolness factor. The case is of course beautifully crafted, it is CNC milled from aluminum. It feels and looks quite impressive. From my perspective, this is the most beautiful design. Don't you agree with me? Size-wise, it is a bit smaller than the DX7S and the 70 DACs, but just barely. I put it on top of the benchmark HPA4, and these two are like made for each other. They have the same width and both cases have these rounded side plates. In terms of controls on connectivity, I think the front panel looks clean and tidy. The sneaky volume pot also works as a standby on-off button. I really like the positioning of all those 3 headphone outputs, and I'm glad besides the 4-pin XLR and the 1/4-inch headphone jack, they also use the best balanced headphone jack of the moment, the 4.4mm Pentacon. Volume knob is super smooth to the touch and has 99 physical steps. However, the volume control is 100% fully digital, and at 99 steps it is so easy knowing how much volume is there left for my headphones. OLED screen has 3 brightness levels, and at the highest setting it is not too bright. It shows all the important information like the selected digital input, the analog input, the gain settings, the sampling frequency for PCM material or the DSD rate, and of course the volume position from -99 to 0 dB. Taking a glance on the back, is clear that the DX7 Pro targets high profile and knowledgeable audiophiles. So the I2S and AAC inputs are a rare sight nowadays, and I'm welcoming those. Of course there's also an USB input, a coaxial and an optical input. Since this is a fully balanced input to output DAC, it has RCAs and XLRs on the back. One important aspect is that with the volume pot that works as a menu navigator can be accessed only basic features of the DX7 Pro. If you want to fully customize it to your liking, I recommend using the remote control from the package. With it you can select from 7 digital filters that are working on the hardware level from the ES9038 Pro itself. You can select 3 brightness levels, you can select your desired analog output. DX7 PRO has also a small memory buffer and will remember the volume setting for every selected output. You can have 0 dB on the line out and minus 20 dB on the phone out. I think that is quite convenient. Most of the tech specs are already mentioned, but I will just add that DX7 PRO ditched the TPA 6120 headphone amplifier circuit in favor of the cleaner sounding LME 4792 dual op amps. And since Topic is using 2 of them, it means the headphone amp circuit is fully balanced, as is the DAC part. Why it is kind of interesting is that both of these op amps are socketed, so in theory if you wish to roll some dual op amps and maybe use something fancier, like the Burson V6 or the Sparkos Labs dual op amps, you can do that. Even the DAC output stage consisting of 2 LME op amps are also put on the deep 8 sockets, but sincerely I do not recommend changing those. Those are already very good, have been tested for good performance and thermal stability, and others might not sound as good. Okay everyone, I think it's time to have a longer listening session. So I first listened to it via some very sensitive in-ear monitors, but before going deep into its performance, 2 things need to be mentioned. First one is the output impedance of all the headphone outputs. For a good damping factor, the headphone impedance should be at least 8 times bigger than that of the source. This is called the rule of 8s. You should know that the single-ended quarter-inch headphone out has an impedance of 4.7 ohms, and multiplying that by 8, it means a headphone with an impedance of at least 37.6 ohms should be used for the best results. Of course, it doesn't mean lower impedance ones will not sound just fine. It's just that the damping factor will be decreased and the diaphragm control will be affected a bit. Both balanced headphone outputs have a higher output impedance of 9.4 ohms, and multiplying that by 8, it means a headphone with at least 75 ohms should be used for the best results. But I presume that Topic increased the output impedance of these headphone outputs so that the headphone amp circuit will never be overdriven into clipping, but this is just a wild guess and not a fact. I personally don't recommend using very sensitive IEMs on the balanced outs and only on the low gain settings for safety reasons. And second thing that needs to be mentioned is that all 3 headphone outputs have noise under a very strict control, so I'm pleased to report that DX7 PRO is completely noise free on all 3 headphone outputs. On low gain or high gain, it doesn't really matter. So background is always free of any gremlins or mains hum. I think isolation circuit plays a big role here, and DX7 PRO is basically among the most silent units I tested as of late. As a brief comparison, I think it has much less mains noise than the Mytek Brooklyn DAC Plus, a bit less than the Kitsch S3, and of course lower than that of the Headam Gilmore Light Mark II, Burson Playmate, RZH Bacillus, and about on the same level with Own Audio S6 Pro, and with my reference Matrix Audio Element X. So IEMs users rejoice on the single-ended or on the balanced out, this thing rocks pretty hard. I decided to listen to the lowest impedance IEMs from my possession, and those were the 16 ohm Syngot EN700 Pro, and following the rule of 8s I should have a lower damping factor, but sincerely at a sensitivity of 101 decibels I didn't feel a slower transient response or some weaker dynamics. They sounded as good as I remember those on my big rig, so DX7 PRO has lots of authority, a hard grip and a good diaphragm control for any IEMs in my possession. I then moved to the full-sized headphones, and I was very curious how a DX7 PRO headphone amp section will behave with current drive low impedance planar magnetic headphones. So I decided first listening to the 20 ohm Quad Era 1 headphones that you see right here, and at about 94 decibels per 1 milliwatt. These are neither too easy to drive, not very power hungry. So on the 4-pin XLR output and engaging high gain, I could go maximum to minus 80 decibels volume wise, and of course my comfortable level would be at about minus 20 decibels. So in the worst case scenario I would have another 80 decibels of headroom and dynamic range left on tap. So I think DX7 PRO is an incredibly powerful machine. Quad Era 1 was basically the only case where I felt that the 9.4 ohm output impedance of the balanced out took away part of the magic Era 1 basically are known for, so that is speed and impact. And it wasn't basically a night and day difference compared to, say, a benchmark HPA4, but it was quite obvious with faster paced music. Era 1 lost that nimble and light on feet approach to music reproduction, that kick that instantly rises the mood and that very clean outline of the notes. So I believe the diaphragm control was just not its best, and this is basically what happened. But when I moved to the lowest sensitivity and hardest to drive headphone from my stable, things improved a lot. So I'm of course talking about the hi-fi man area with its 35 ohm impedance at about 90 decibels per 1 milliwatt of power. It is not an easy task to move around and control, yet at minus 15 decibels I was comfortable driving them with lots of headroom left on tap, so this is plenty of volume even for chesky or reference recordings. So I was pleased to find that the DX7 PRO is capable of driving this particular headphone, and I know a lot of dedicated headphone amplifiers that can't do that, so I think that is quite an amazing treat for the DX7 PRO. And weirdly enough, the damping factor was not a problem anymore. They kicked, they punched, and even they delivered some incredible dynamics, and I was basically listening to them at their fullest potential. So the soundstage size didn't suffer at all. Its internal headphone amp section is really capable and can move around a lot of air. So moving on to the Sennheiser HD660 that has 150 ohm impedance. It was basically an easy game for it, so at minus 25 decibels I was sitting basically in the middle of a rock gig. So as expected, HD660 were fully driven to the fullest potential. So what I enjoyed the most was the driver control and that instant rise and instant stop of the headphone driver. So HD660 sounded like being on steroids, and more power than that will be just overkill for them. So from my longer headphone listening sessions I've learned a few things. First of all, on the balanced headphone output you should use headphones with impedance that has 35 ohms or higher, and all that kick and impact will be yours to have. And on the single-ended quarter-inch headphone out you can use any IEM or any portable headphones that has more than 16 ohm impedance for the best results. The rest is basically history, so headphone listeners were not overlooked this time around. I'm really glad that the DX7 PRO delivered everything I wanted it to be. After moving and connecting DX7 PRO to the KEF LS50 wireless in the living room you see in the back, I was sincerely not shocked hearing more hidden details, more little nuances. That is because the internal DAC of the LS50 wireless can't possibly render or show me those. So what was quite unusual and for me is how fast the coaxial drivers transformed into completely something else. So they suddenly started throwing punches at me with these incredible kicks into my chest. So bass notes suddenly reached lower octaves, and I didn't particularly understand how was that all possible. So I connected the Chromecast audio enabled TV with the DX7 PRO, and again I fired some tidal masters, but this time I focused on the transient response and on the decay of the notes. So I started listening to Mozart violin concertos, and I think it started pushing all those notes farther away from me. So the air moving around the room was really obvious. So without a doubt, the DX7 PRO possesses a well-defined pinpoint imaging, and all the spatial cues were easily spotted. So picking up individual sounds from a crowded track is like playing a game on the easy mode. Moving further to something more aggressive sounding like the newest album of Lacuna Coil, Black Anima, was a wait a sec moment for me, because the DX7 PRO, I think it was created for faster paced music, where all the frequency range is basically needed. So bass notes starting waving my ears and all that drive and energy instantly, I felt it inside me, so turning me into the dark side. So the voice of Christina was like avoiding the crowd around her and paving its way towards me. This is a mediocre mastered album, that is true, but the raw energy is there and in spades. So DX7 Pro is not shy showing off all those traits to me. And I think in terms of frequency response, the DX7 Pro is super linear. It plays basically with the big boys in this category. It is not rounding the frequency extremes, and nothing will hide from its side. So I don't spot even any glimpse of any roll-off. Nothing. All my usual bass tracks were passed with flying colors, so sub bass is deep reaching, it has a very good sustain, it is also clean sounding, so the grainy and blurry bass notes are never present. So I think mid bass is never overdone, like how others are doing with their DACs and CD players and so on. Mid-range is basically on the same level with the bass, it never enters or leaves the spotlight. It is always in the middle of the mix, so I think voices carry a lot of emotions, never dry sounding, not too sweet nor too warm. So I think in terms of mid-range performance it is like disappearing without adding a hint of any color. So if you are looking for a warmer or for a charismatic sounding DAC, this one will not be for you. So DX7 Pro is brutally honest with everything, and it shows everything that is hidden. So I think the treble is quite exceptional, always clean. It is sparkly up top without making me lower the volume down. So it bites at times, that is true, but it has a very good texture, and I can feel basically all the cymbals with my eardrums very easily. It is extremely transparent in the treble area and very detailed to a point of I started questioning myself if I need to spend 5 times more for a slight improvement on a much bigger DAC. In terms of detail retrieval and transparency, the DX7 Pro is staying in the top 3 for me at any price point. I also compared it with 3 other DACs, the topping D70, SMSL M500, and with my own Matrix Audio Element X. But I don't want to make this video super long and super boring, so you should check all this comparison on my website. There is a link below, please check it out. So moving on into the conclusion, I think topping DX7 Pro seen a long development time and optimization process, but in the end I think it delivers a very solid performance on all fronts. It has everything an audiophile would desire, and as a result I consider it an incredible all-in-one device packed with features that came as a bonus for a close to perfect audio performance. At just $100 more compared to the older X7S, I believe the DX7 Pro fully justified its price, and at $599 I think this is currently my best recommendation for you. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review can be read on my website, there is a link below. Please listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers guys, bye bye.